My name is Kristen, 38 years old, and I watched my husband Derek laugh like he'd won the lottery while signing our divorce papers in his attorney's mahogany-panelled office. His smirking lawyer was already calculating his fees, while Derek's girlfriend Cassandra waited outside in her red Ferrari. He thought he was leaving me penniless after draining our joint accounts for his gambling debts. Before I reveal how his victory dance ended, tell me where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever been underestimated by someone who claimed to love you. I met Derek at an art gallery opening in Seattle 8 years ago. The rain was pounding against the floor-to-ceiling windows, while inside champagne flowed and conversations hummed about installations nobody really understood. Derek appeared beside me with 2 glasses of wine, critiquing a sculpture with such confidence that I assumed he was an art dealer. Turns out he was an investment advisor who'd crashed the event for free drinks and potential clients. His charm was undeniable. Within minutes, he had me laughing about the pretentious crowd, while simultaneously making me feel like I was the only authentic person in the room. He wore a perfectly tailored suit that I'd later learn was his only one rotated through dry cleaning twice a week to maintain appearances. But that night, he looked like success personified. Our first 6 months were a whirlwind of expensive restaurants, surprise weekend trips to Vancouver, and Derek constantly telling me I was different from other women he'd dated. He said I was genuine, unpretentious, someone who valued real connection over material things. The irony of that statement would haunt me years later as I discovered his entire persona was built on material deception. Derek presented himself as self-made a kid from nothing who'd clawed his way to success through sheer determination. He told stories about sleeping in his car during college, eating ramen for months, studying by streetlight when his power got cut off. Every successful person loves an underdog story, and I fell for his completely. The truth emerged much later. Derek was actually a trust fund kid who'd blown through $3 million by age 25 on failed business ventures and gambling. His parents had cut him off, and he'd been desperately trying to rebuild ever since, using charm and borrowed confidence as currency. We married after a year of dating in a small ceremony at Pike Place Market. Derek insisted on keeping it intimate, just immediate family and closest friends. He spun it, as romantics said, big weddings were for people who needed to prove something. Really, he couldn't afford anything larger and was already in debt from maintaining his successful facade during our courtship. 3 months into marriage, Derek took complete control of our finances. He presented it as practical efficiency. He was the investment expert after all. Why would we both waste time managing money when he could optimize everything? I was working as a data analyst for Amazon at the time, making good money, and Derek convinced me to quit. "You're burning yourself out for corporate overlords," he said. "Let me handle the finances while you find something you're passionate about. We don't need 2 incomes when I can make our money work for us." I agreed, thinking this was what partnership looked like. Trust, support, letting each other's strengths shine. 2 weeks after I quit, my grandmother Eleanor passed away in Portland. She left me her flower shop on Alberta Street, a narrow building squeezed between a tattoo parlor and a vintage clothing store. The shop had been closed for 2 years, and the neighborhood had changed dramatically since she'd operated it. Derek took one look at the property and declared it worthless. "Sell that dump," he said. "We need cash for my investment opportunities. The market's about to explode and we need liquid capital." But something about that little shop called to me. Maybe it was the morning light through the dusty windows, or the way the original tin ceiling reflected patterns on the walls. I told Derek I'd handle the sale myself, that he should focus on his investments. Instead of selling, I started spending my days there. While Derek was at his office downtown or traveling for what he called investment conferences, I was scrubbing floors, painting walls, and discovering the bones of something beautiful underneath decades of neglect. I used $15,000 from my personal savings money I'd accumulated before marriage to begin renovations. Nothing major at first, just enough to make the space rentable. Derek never asked what I was doing with my days. He'd come home talking about market movements and portfolio diversification, while I nodded and didn't mention the contractor quotes I'd been reviewing. The gambling started showing up in subtle ways. Charges from Las Vegas hotels explained as client entertainment, cash withdrawals that Derek said were for tips and incidentals during business trips. A recurring subscription to a sports betting site he claimed was for investment research, studying probability models. Meanwhile, I'd transformed the flower shop into 3 separate retail spaces. The organic bakery that rented the main floor was run by a young couple from Bend who made the best sourdough in Portland. They signed a 5-year lease at $3,000 per month. The basement became a pottery studio and the upper floor went to a jewelry designer. Combined, the property was generating $8,000 monthly. I formed Rose Holdings LLC using my maiden name Rose. Everything was completely legal, properly documented, and separate from our marital finances. Derek had been so insistent about maintaining separate investment portfolios for tax purposes that he'd actually made it easier for me to build something entirely my own. During this time, I also started a financial blog called Money Honey. It began as a way to process what I was learning about property management and passive income. I wrote late at night after Derek had passed out from whiskey, sharing insights about building wealth that contradicted everything he preached about high-risk investments and quick returns. Derek would sometimes see me typing and ask what I was doing. Just journaling, I'd say, processing my thoughts. He'd pat my head condescendingly and tell me writing was a good hobby for someone with too much time on their hands. His family made everything worse. His mother, Linda, treated me like hired help at family dinners. His sister, Jennifer, constantly made jokes about Derek's charity case wife. They discussed trust funds and inheritances while pointedly reminding everyone that I came from nothing and should be grateful Derek had rescued me. What they didn't know was that by our second anniversary, I owned not just the renovated flower shop, but had leveraged its equity to purchase a small apartment building 6 blocks away. The blog had grown to 50,000 monthly readers, and advertising revenue was bringing in $4,000 per month. Derek's condescension became my fuel. Every time he explained that I wouldn't understand complex investments, I researched harder. When he laughed at my suggestion to diversify into real estate, I bought another property. His dismissal became my motivation. Year 2 of marriage revealed the depth of Derek's deception. I discovered his gambling wasn't recreational, but compulsive. While organizing his home office, I found a notebook with betting site passwords. The losses were staggering. $70,000 on a single basketball game, $40,000 on a horse race that was supposed to be a sure thing. When I confronted him, Derek turned it around immediately. "This is investment research," he said. "You don't understand statistical arbitrage and probability modeling. I'm developing a system that will revolutionize algorithmic trading. These aren't losses, they're data points." He was so convincing that for a moment I questioned my own understanding. But data doesn't lie, and the data showed a clear pattern of escalating bets and devastating losses covered by increasingly creative financial manipulation. While Derek was losing our supposed fortune on gambling sites, my flower shop had become a cornerstone of Alberta Street's revival. The bakery was so successful they wanted to expand into the building next door. I negotiated the purchase and lease simultaneously, adding another property to Rose Holdings while creating a larger space for my anchor tenant. The property management company I'd created wasn't just holding real estate anymore. I'd hired 2 employees, both women who'd been underestimated in their previous careers. Sarah had been passed over for a promotion 6 times at her last job despite outperforming everyone. Maria had been told she was too aggressive when she suggested expansion strategies. Together, we were building something extraordinary. My second major purchase was a 12-unit apartment building in Irvington. The seller was going through a divorce and needed a quick, clean sale. I offered cash closing in 2 weeks. Derek was in Atlantic City that week for what he called a financial technology conference. His Instagram showed him at blackjack tables with a cocktail waitress named Cassandra, who appeared in multiple photos. Cassandra was 24, blonde, and had the kind of surgical enhancements Derek always claimed to find tacky. She laughed at his jokes like he was a professional comedian and touched his arm every time she spoke. In one photo, she was wearing a necklace that looked suspiciously like one my mother had given me that had recently gone missing. The Money Honey blog had evolved from personal finance tips to detailed case studies of wealth building. I never revealed personal details, keeping everything theoretical, but readers connected with the authenticity. Publishers started reaching out, wanting to turn the blog into a book. 3 different agents contacted me in 1 week, all promising bestseller status. I accepted an offer from Random House for a $300,000 advance. The contract was signed under my LLC. Payments went to a business account Derek didn't know existed. The book would be published anonymously, maintaining the Money Honey mystery that readers loved. Meanwhile, Derek's family continued their casual cruelty. At Thanksgiving, Jennifer asked loudly if Derek still had to give me an allowance for shopping. His mother suggested I should be grateful Derek was patient with my lack of contribution to the household. His father pulled Derek aside to discuss protecting assets from gold diggers, not bothering to lower his voice. That same weekend, I closed on my 3rd and 4th properties, a small commercial complex in Belmont and a downtown parking structure that came with a lucrative contract from the city. Combined value was over $6 million. The rental income from all properties was now exceeding $30,000 per month. I started clustering my properties strategically, creating micro-neighborhoods where my tenants could support each other. The bakery supplied the coffee shop 2 blocks away. The pottery studio displayed work in the jewelry store. The apartment residents got discounts at all the retail spaces. It was community building disguised as property management. Derek's absences grew longer. Golf tournaments that lasted 5 days. Investment conferences in cities that weren't hosting any financial events. He'd come home exhausted, smelling of perfume and cigarettes, complaining about how hard he was working for our future. One night, he stumbled in at 3 a.m. drunk and reeking of casino smoke. He crawled into bed muttering about a sure thing that went sideways. In the morning, $30,000 had disappeared from our savings. When I asked about it, he said he'd moved it to a high-yield investment account I wouldn't have access to for tax purposes. The Money Honey book was scheduled for release in 6 months. Pre-orders were already exceeding expectations. The publisher wanted to do a podcast tour, keeping my identity hidden through voice modulation. They were calling it the biggest anonymous release since Elena Ferrante. Sarah and Maria had grown Rose Holdings into a legitimate property management empire. We had systems, processes, and a reputation for transforming undervalued properties into community assets. Other property owners were asking us to consult, offering significant fees for our expertise. Derek never once asked what I did during the days. He'd call sometimes to tell me to pick up his dry cleaning or make dinner reservations, always assuming I was sitting at home watching television. When packages arrived from property management software companies or real estate attorneys, he never questioned them. His narcissism was so complete that he couldn't imagine I had any life beyond serving his needs. The 5th property acquisition was the one that changed everything. A historic building in downtown Seattle, 6 stories of potential that had been tangled in probate for 3 years. I offered cash, promised to maintain its historic character, and the estate accepted immediately. Purchase price was $4 million. Renovation would cost another $6 million. Once complete, it would be worth $20 million minimum. To finance it, I didn't need Derek or banks. The other properties were generating enough income, and the book advance covered the down payment. I was building an empire with compound interest, while Derek was destroying our marriage with compound losses. The credit card disaster happened on a Tuesday morning. I was at the downtown building meeting with architects when my card was declined at the coffee shop. Then another card. Then another. Derek had maxed out every card in my name, $40,000 of debt I didn't know existed. The transactions told a story of desperation. Cash advances at casinos, online gambling sites, luxury purchases that I'd never seen. There was even a $5,000 charge at a jewelry store on the same day my grandmother's ring went missing from my jewelry box. I hired a private investigator that afternoon. Not because I needed proof of the affair. Cassandra's Instagram provided plenty of that. I needed documentation of the gambling, the debts, the financial crimes he was committing in my name. The investigator, a former forensic accountant named Bill, was thorough. Within 2 weeks, he had photos of Derek and Cassandra at Snoqualmie casino receipts showing Derek had spent over $300,000 in 6 months, and evidence that Cassandra wasn't just a cocktail waitress, but a known casino plant who targeted desperate gamblers with money. Cassandra's real name was Casey Thompson. She had a system: find married men losing big off of comfort and excitement, extract as much money as possible before moving on. Derek wasn't her first mark, but according to Bill's research, he was her most pathetic. The worst discovery was the extent of Derek's debts. He owed $700,000 to various creditors, some legitimate, some decidedly not. He'd borrowed from loan sharks, using our house as collateral, telling them I had a trust fund that would pay out soon. He'd taken advances from his employer against future commissions that would never materialize. He'd also been borrowing from family members. $50,000 from his mother for a sure investment, $30,000 from his brother for a business opportunity, $20,000 from his college roommate for a medical emergency that never happened. Each loan came with promises that I had family money coming that would cover everything. I consulted with Madison Chen that week, a divorce attorney known for handling complex financial divorces. She usually didn't take cases under $50 million in assets, but my situation intrigued her. A husband who thought his wife was broke while she secretly owned a real estate empire. She took the case immediately. Madison's strategy was brilliant. Let Derek think he was in control. Let him file first. Let him set the terms. Then reveal everything in court, where it would be documented and undeniable. The Money Honey book launched while I was documenting Derek's deception. It hit the New York Times bestseller list in the first week. The mystery around the author's identity only fueled sales. Everyone wanted to know who was behind the revolutionary approach to wealth building that challenged traditional investment strategies. Podcast interviews were surreal. I'd do them from the office at my downtown building while Derek thought I was at yoga. The voice modulation made me sound different, but the message resonated. Women especially connected with the idea of building wealth quietly, without asking permission or seeking validation. Media requests poured in. Forbes wanted an exclusive reveal. The Wall Street Journal offered a column. CNBC wanted a show. I turned them all down, knowing the revelation would be more powerful if it happened in court. The downtown building renovation was progressing beautifully. The top floor would be luxury condos. The middle floors were office space, already being courted by tech companies. The ground floor would house retail and restaurants. Every decision was documented, every permit pulled properly, every contractor paid on time. Derek started getting suspicious about something, though he couldn't pinpoint what. He'd make comments about me seeming different, more confident. He didn't like it. He started making threats disguised as jokes. If you ever left me, you'd be homeless in a week. Good thing you need me to survive. The gambling had made him meaner. When he lost, which was constantly, he'd come home and criticize everything. The house wasn't clean enough. Dinner wasn't ready. I'd gained weight. I'd lost weight. I was too quiet. I talked too much. Nothing was ever right. One night, he grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave bruises because I'd questioned a charge on our statement. The charge was for a hotel room at the same place Cassandra posted photos from that weekend. He said I was getting paranoid and maybe I needed professional help for my delusions. I documented everything. Photos of bruises, recordings of threats, screenshots of financial abuse. Madison was building a case that would destroy him while protecting me completely. The sixth property acquisition happened during this chaos. I bought the building where Derek's investment firm rented office space. It was poetic justice wrapped in a real estate transaction. His company had been struggling missing rent payments, and the previous owner wanted them gone. I gave them a 6-month grace period, knowing exactly when I'd be serving eviction papers. Cassandra's pregnancy announcement came via Instagram. Derek hadn't even told me before she posted ultrasound photos with captions about their little miracle. The comments from his family were supportive, as if I didn't exist, as if we weren't still married. The pregnancy was fake, of course. Bill the investigator found that out within days. Cassandra had used the same ultrasound photos with 3 different men over 2 years. It was part of her playbook to lock down a mark when they started pulling away. Derek's cocaine problem started around this time. Cassandra's influence, according to Bill, it made him more erratic, more violent, more desperate. He sold my jewelry without asking, including pieces from my grandmother. He emptied our emergency fund. He tried to take a loan against the house but needed my signature, which I refused. The threats escalated. He said if I didn't support him, I'd end up living in my car. He'd make sure no one in Seattle would hire me. He'd tell everyone I was crazy abusive, a gold digger who'd tried to steal from him. He had no idea I'd been recording every threat, documenting every lie. Derek announced the divorce at Canlis Restaurant during what I thought was our anniversary dinner. He'd invited his brother and sister to witness it, turning my humiliation into dinner theatre. He had his attorney on speakerphone as he served me papers between the appetizer and main course. "I'm setting you free," he announced to the room. "You can stop pretending to be something you're not. I'll be generous. Give you enough to start over somewhere small, maybe move back to Portland where you belong." His terms were insulting by design. $5,000 to help with moving expenses. I could keep my clothes and personal items. Everything else was his, including the car he'd bought, but put in my name for insurance purposes. His attorney, someone named Randy, who'd gotten his degree online and mostly handled DUIs, had drawn up papers that read like a eviction notice. I reviewed the papers calmly, while Derek's family watched, waiting for tears or begging. Instead, I folded them carefully and placed them in my purse. "That seems very thorough," I said. "I'll have my attorney review everything." Derek laughed. "What attorney? You can't afford one. Just sign them now and we can all move on with our lives." Cassandra's waiting for me, and honestly, being with someone who actually contributes to a relationship is refreshing. Jennifer chimed in that I should be grateful Derek was giving me anything at all. His brother Michael suggested I could probably move in with my parents if things got tough. The entire dinner was choreographed cruelty. Madison Chen was worth every penny of her $5,000 hourly rate. When I showed her Derek's proposed settlement, she actually laughed. "This is what happens when men confuse confidence with competence," she said. "He's so sure you have nothing that he didn't even do basic discovery." The negotiations started the following week. Derek and Randy showed up to Madison's office and nearly walked out when they saw the name on the door. Madison Chen was legendary in Seattle legal circles, known for the $50 million Bezos executive divorce and the $100 million Microsoft settlement. "She must be doing this pro bono," Derek whispered to Randy, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Probably some women helping women charity thing." Madison's conference room was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, original Chihuly sculptures, photos with Supreme Court justices. Randy looked like he might vomit. "Your client is offering $5,000, Madison began. "My client will be seeking appropriate compensation for financial abuse, documented theft, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." Derek actually laughed. "What financial abuse? I've supported her for years. She hasn't worked a day since we got married. Check the tax returns." Madison smiled. "We have. We've also checked business registrations, property records, and publishing contracts. Would you like to revise your statement about my client's employment status?" The bluff held. Derek and Randy assumed we were fishing, trying to find something that didn't exist. They stuck to their story that I was a dependent spouse who deserved minimum support. The first formal filing included Derek's financial disclosure, $2 million in claimed assets, mostly in volatile investments and cryptocurrency that conveniently couldn't be immediately liquidated. He listed monthly expenses of $20,000, claiming poverty while wearing a watch worth more than most people's cars. His family started a social media campaign about gold diggers and false accusations. Jennifer posted about women who trap successful men. His mother wrote a long Facebook post about raising sons in a world where ambitious men are punished for success. Cassandra started a GoFundMe for their legal expenses that raised $12. Meanwhile, I was fielding offers from Netflix for the Money Honey story. Publishers wanted a second book. Speaking agencies were promising six-figure speaking fees. Every opportunity was managed through my LLC building value that Derek knew nothing about. The sixth property acquisition was particularly satisfying. The building where Derek's firm rented space was hemorrhaging money, and his company was 3 months behind on rent. As the new owner, I could have evicted them immediately, but Madison advised patience. Better to serve notice at the perfect moment. Book royalties were exceeding all projections. International rights sold to 12 countries. The audiobook was #1 on Audible. Universities were teaching money honey methods in their business schools. The anonymous author had become a phenomenon, and revealing my identity would only increase the value. 2 weeks before the final hearing, Derek made one last attempt at reconciliation. He showed up at the house at midnight, drunk and crying. He loved me, he said. Cassandra meant nothing. The gambling was a sickness he'd get help for. We could start over, maybe have kids, build the life we'd always dreamed about. When I didn't immediately let him in, he became angry. "You'll be nothing without me," he screamed. "You're throwing away the best thing that ever happened to you. No one else will want a 38-year-old woman with no career and no prospects." The neighbors called the police. Derek was arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct. The booking photo showed a broken man, nothing like the confident charmer I'd met at the gallery 8 years ago. Cassandra didn't bail him out. His family let him sit in jail for 2 days before finally intervening. The final hearing was held on a Thursday morning in May. The courthouse was newer, all glass and steel, trying to project transparency and justice. Madison and I arrived early with 3 assistants wheeling in boxes of documentation. We set up our presentation with the precision of a military operation. Derek arrived late, of course, making an entrance with Randy and a new attorney he'd hired last minute when he realized Randy was out of his depth. The new attorney, Harrison Pike, was competent but unprepared, having had only 2 days to review the case. Cassandra was there in a tight red dress, more appropriate for nightclub than court. She sat in the front row of the gallery, occasionally checking her phone and sighing dramatically. Derek's family filled the rest of the row, his mother clutching pearls. I'm certain were fake. Judge Patricia Yamamoto called the hearing to order. She was known for efficiency and had little patience for theatrics. Let's review the proposed settlement, she began. Harrison Pike stood trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Your Honour, my client has been exceptionally generous given the circumstances. Mr. Williams has been the sole provider throughout this marriage, while Mrs. Williams has chosen not to pursue employment. He continued outlining Derek's narrative, the successful husband supporting an unmotivated wife, the generous settlement offer despite no legal obligation, the unfair attacks on his character when he'd done nothing but provide. Derek nodded along, occasionally shooting me sympathetic looks as if he was doing me a favor. When Pike finished, Derek actually stood and addressed the court directly. Your Honor, I want Kristen to be okay. Despite everything, I care about her. $5,000 might not seem like much, but it's what I can afford, and honestly, it's more than she contributed to our marriage. There it was, on record. His dismissal of my existence reduced to a court transcript. Judge Yamamoto turned to our table. Ms. Chen. Say to you, Ms. Chen, your response. Madison stood slowly, savouring the moment. Your Honour, we need to correct several misrepresentations. First, let's address Mr. Williams's claimed assets. She presented Derek's real financial situation. The gambling debts to legitimate creditors totalling $400,000. The loans from family members totalling $150,000. The informal debts to less legitimate sources that Bill had documented at another $200,000. Mr. Williams has a negative net worth of approximately $750,000, Madison explained. His claimed assets are either already leveraged or fictional. Derek jumped up. That's a lie. I have investments worth millions. Harrison Pike tried to pull him down while Randy, who shouldn't have even been at counsel's table, looked ready to flee. Now Madison continued, let's discuss Mrs. Williams's financial status. This was the moment. Madison clicked her remote and the first slide appeared on the courtroom screen. Mrs. Williams owns Rose Holdings LLC, a property management company established 4 years ago. The company owns 6 commercial properties in Portland and Seattle. Derek's mouth fell open. That's impossible. The flower shop on Alberta Street, purchased and renovated by Mrs. Williams' current valuation, $4.2 million. Derek turned to stare at me. You said you were handling the sale. The Irvington apartment complex, 12 units fully occupied, valued at $8 million. Cassandra stood up in the gallery, her face flushing red. The Belmont commercial complex, anchored by 3 successful businesses, valued at $12.5 million. Derek's mother gasped audibly. The downtown parking structure with city contract, valued at $5 million. Randy actually did leave, walking out of the courtroom. The historic Sentinel building in downtown Seattle, currently under renovation, valued at $20 million post-completion. Derek collapsed into his chair. Cassandra was already at the door. And finally, the Cascade Tower, where Mr. Williams's investment firm is currently 3 months behind on rent, valued at $15 million. You're my landlord, Derek's voice cracked like a teenager's. Additionally, Madison continued, Mrs. Williams is the author of the Money Honey blog and book series, which has generated approximately $15 million in revenue, with projected earnings of another $10 million over the next 2 years. The book, Derek kept repeating. The blog, Money Honey, is Kristen. The judge reviewed the documentation Madison provided. Everything was meticulously recorded. Property deeds, tax returns, bank statements, publishing contracts. So Mrs. Williams's net worth is, Judge Yamamoto asked. Approximately $97 million, Your Honor. The courtroom erupted. Derek's family was shouting. Cassandra was screaming at Derek from the doorway about being lied to about his wealth. Harrison Pike was frantically reviewing documents while Derek sat, frozen his face, cycling through shades of white and grey. Order, Judge Yamamoto commanded. Mr. Williams, were you aware of your wife's business ventures? Derek couldn't speak. He just shook his head, then nodded, then shook it again. Your Honor, Madison interjected. We have emails from Mr. Williams referring to my client's work as her little hobby, playing on her computer and wasting time with worthless projects. He was informed but chose to dismiss and diminish her efforts. Derek finally found his voice. She deceived me. This is fraud. She hid assets. Everything was legal and declared, Madison responded. Taxes were paid. Businesses were registered. Mr. Williams simply never asked what his wife was doing because he assumed she was incapable of anything significant. The judge reviewed more documents, occasionally looking up at Derek with barely concealed disdain. I need time, Harrison Pike pleaded. This changes everything. It changes nothing, Madison countered. The assets were acquired through Mrs. Williams's separate efforts funded by inheritance and earned income, all of which predated or existed separate from the marriage. Under state law, they remain her separate property. But I supported her, Derek shouted. I paid for everything while she built this in secret. Madison pulled out a final folder. Actually, we've documented that Mrs. Williams paid 60% of household expenses through her property income, which Mr. Williams claimed as his own on tax returns. Would you like us to involve the IRS in this discussion? Harrison Pike grabbed Derek's arm to stop him from speaking. Judge Yamamoto had seen enough. I'm prepared to rule. given the evidence presented and Mr. Williams's own testimony that Mrs. Williams didn't work during the marriage, all assets in her name are indeed separate property. She continued, furthermore, Mr. Williams owes Mrs. Williams $200,000 for jewellery and personal property sold without permission, documented by receipts and photos provided. Derek was sobbing now. His mother had left. Jennifer was texting frantically. Cassandra was gone. Mr. Williams will also be responsible for all debts incurred in Mrs. Williams's name, without her knowledge, totaling $40,000. Additionally, given the documented financial abuse and intentional infliction of emotional distress, I'm granting Mrs. Williams's restraining order. Mr. Williams is prohibited from coming within 500 feet of any property owned by Rose Holdings LLC. She turned to Derek. Mr. Williams, you're fortunate. Mrs. Williams isn't seeking damages for defamation and theft. I suggest you take this resolution and be grateful. The gavel came down with finality. The aftermath was swift and brutal for Derek. Harrison Pike quit on the spot, telling Derek he was lucky to avoid criminal charges. Randy was already gone, probably updating his LinkedIn to remove any mention of this case. Cassandra's exit was spectacular. She'd waited outside the courthouse with Derek's car keys and a plan. While we were inside, she'd driven to his apartment and cleared out anything valuable, the Rolex, the cufflinks, even the espresso machine. She left a note saying she was pregnant with someone else's baby, and Derek was the worst mark she'd ever worked. Derek's family turned on him immediately. His mother called Madison's office asking if I'd consider lending them money to cover Derek's debts to them. Jennifer posted on Facebook about the importance of background checks and financial transparency in relationships. Michael threatened to sue Derek for fraud over the loan. The eviction notice for Derek's investment firm was served the next day. 30 days to vacate for non-payment of rent. His partners, discovering the extent of his gambling and debts, voted him out immediately. His license was under review for financial misconduct. Everything he'd built on appearances crumbled in hours. The Money Honey reveal happened naturally. A reporter connected the dots between the court records and the anonymous author. The story exploded across financial media. From housewife to powerhouse, the hidden fortune of Money Honey became the most shared article of the year. Interview requests flooded in. Oprah's team called. The View wanted a full hour. Every morning show competed for the exclusive. I chose a podcast with a female financial journalist who'd been supporting women's economic empowerment for decades. The conversation went viral, crashing their servers from download demand. Book sales quadrupled overnight. The publisher rushed to print another 1 million copies. The second book, already in progress, got a 7-figure advance. Universities started inviting me to speak at their business schools. The Money Honey method became a movement. Derek's complete destruction took 3 weeks. The gambling debts came due with interest. The loan sharks he'd borrowed from didn't care about his sob story. His family refused to help. His friends, learning he'd borrowed from them, cut contact. The cocaine addiction he'd developed with Cassandra left him unemployable in finance. He sent a letter through his latest attorney, a public defender assigned to his bankruptcy case. It was 12 pages of rambling apology, self-pity, and bizarre accusations. He loved me, but I'd driven him to gambling. He was successful until I undermined his confidence. If I'd just been honest about my wealth, we could have built something together. At the bottom, in handwriting that showed his deterioration, he'd written, "I never really saw you, did I? No, Derek, you didn't." But that blindness was his choice, not my deception. The Sentinel building renovation completed 3 months later. The opening gala was Seattle's event of the season. Tech executives, artists, and entrepreneurs filled the restored ballroom. The mayor attended. The press called it the crown jewel of downtown restoration. I gave a speech that night about building in shadows and choosing when to step into light, about the power of being underestimated, about the difference between keeping secrets and protecting yourself from those who diminish your light. As I spoke, I saw Derek in the back of the room. He'd somehow gotten in, probably through the catering company, where he'd found work washing dishes. He looked smaller, defeated, nothing like the man who'd laughed while signing divorce papers. Security moved to remove him, but I waved them off. Let him see what he'd missed. Let him understand that his mockery had been my motivation. His dismissal had been my fuel. The speech ended with standing ovation. Derek slipped out during the applause. It was the last time I saw him. 6 months after the divorce, my life had transformed into something I couldn't have imagined during those years of building in secret. Rose Holdings had expanded to properties in 3 states. We specialized in transforming neglected buildings into community anchors. Every project started with the question, how can this space serve the people who actually live here? The portfolio value exceeded $150 million. The Money Honey platform had evolved beyond books and blogs. We launched an app that taught financial literacy through gamification. A nonprofit arm provided free financial counseling to women leaving abusive relationships. The online community had 2 million members sharing their own stories of economic empowerment. Forbes featured me on their cover with the headline, "The Nine-Figure Secret." The article detailed how I'd built an empire while being told I was worthless. It became required reading in several MBA programs. But the most meaningful moments were smaller. The emails from women who'd started their own businesses after reading my story. The young woman who left her controlling boyfriend after recognizing the financial abuse patterns I'd described. The mother who began building her own safety net while her husband thought she was planning birthday parties. Derek's letter arrived on what would have been our 9th anniversary. This one was different. Written from a treatment facility, clear-headed and genuinely reflective. He wrote about understanding finally that his gambling wasn't about money but control. His need to diminish me came from his own emptiness. He'd been so afraid of being nothing that he'd needed to make me nothing first. He was working now as an addiction counselor, using his story as a cautionary tale. He'd paid back his family, slowly worked through the legal debts, found something like peace and simplicity. He didn't ask for forgiveness, just wanted me to know that my success had forced him to confront who he really was. I wrote back once. A short note, wishing him well in his recovery, meaning it. Anger is exhausting, and I had better uses for my energy. James entered my life at a fundraiser for financial literacy in schools. He was a high school economics teacher, passionate about giving kids tools their parents never had. He approached me after my speech with questions about making the Money Honey principles accessible to teenagers. Coffee turned into dinner, turned into long walks discussing everything except money. He knew who I was, had read the headlines, but was more interested in my thoughts on sourdough starters and whether the Mariners had a shot this season. He lived modestly in a craftsman house in Ballard, growing vegetables and reading actual books. His wealth was in relationships, experiences, the joy of teaching kids to think critically. He saw my money as just another fact about me, like being left-handed or allergic to shellfish. Our first kiss happened at Pike Place Market, in the spot where Derek had served me divorce papers meant to humiliate me. The universe has a sense of humor about these things. The Money Honey Foundation launched on the 2-year anniversary of the divorce. The mission was simple: help women build financial independence before they need it. We funded small business grants, provided free financial planning, and created safe spaces for women to learn without judgment. The first gala raised $8 million. Derek's mother sent a check for $100,000 with a note about supporting women's empowerment. His sister Jennifer became a monthly donor. Even Cassandra, now using her real name and working as a financial crimes investigator, contributed. The speech I gave that night started with a story about sitting in a mahogany-paneled office, watching my husband laugh as he signed divorce papers. About the moment when net worth becomes self-worth. About building empires in silence and revealing them when the time is right. The audience was filled with women who'd been told they were too much or not enough. Men who'd learnt to see their partners as equals. Young people building their own quiet revolutions. I talked about Derek without naming him, with compassion rather than bitterness. He'd been my catalyst, the pressure that created the diamond. His dismissal had been my permission to build without seeking approval. The truth about success, I said, is that it's not about the numbers in your account, but the knowledge that you can create value from nothing. It's not about proving others wrong, but proving yourself right. It's about building something so solid that when someone tries to knock you down, you're already standing on a foundation they never saw you pour. The flower shop on Alberta Street was still my favourite property. I kept an office in the back where it all started. Sometimes I'd sit there, remembering the woman who'd scrubbed floors while her husband gambled away their future, and marvel at the journey. That woman had been told she was nothing so many times she'd almost believed it. But instead of shrinking, she'd expanded. Instead of becoming less, she'd become everything. Not to spite Derek, but to honour the voice inside that whispered, "You are more than this." The final irony came in a business proposal. A hedge fund wanted to buy Rose Holdings for $300 million. The meeting was in the same building where Derek used to work, the one I now owned. His old office was now a meditation room for building employees. I declined the offer. Some things are worth more than money. The ability to choose to build, to transform spaces and lives, that's the real wealth. Besides, I was just getting started. Now I want to ask you something important. Have you ever been laughed at by someone who should have been your biggest supporter? Have you ever built something in secret because the people around you wouldn't understand or appreciate your vision? What empire are you quietly constructing right now while the world underestimates you? Share your story in the comments below. Let this community know what you're building, what you're overcoming, what strength you're discovering in the shadows. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button. It helps other women find this message when they need it most. Subscribe to this channel for more stories of triumph over dismissal, success over sabotage, and the sweet satisfaction of revealing your worth on your own terms. And please share this video with someone who needs to hear it. That friend who's being diminished by their partner. That family member whose talents are being overlooked. That colleague who's building something beautiful while being told they're wasting their time. Thank you for listening to my journey from invisible to undeniable. Remember, your worth was never determined by who could see it. You were valuable even when you were hidden. You were powerful even when you were dismissed. And when your moment comes to reveal what you've built, may their shock be as profound as your satisfaction. Until next time, keep building your empire, one silent victory at a time.